Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is June 15th. There is something about a June day that feels almost too good to be true. Too warm, too generous, too full of color and light, or the particular sweetness of everything blooming at once. And part of what makes it feel that way is that we always know, that it won't last. Celia Thaxter understood this. She wrote, "O brief, bright smile of summer, O days divine and dear, the voices of winter sorrow already we can hear. And we know that the frosts will find us, and the smiling skies grow rude, while we look in the face of beauty and worship her every mood." That last line, while we look in the face of beauty and worship her every mood, that's the June garden, divine and dear, and all the more precious because the frosts are already coming back around. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1621 that the first greenhouse in Britain was erected at Oxford in preparation for a predicted severe winter. A gardener tended a charcoal fire through the night to keep up the temperature. The garden was brand new. Just weeks before, the English nobleman Henry Danvers, the first Earl of Danby, had given the University of Oxford £5,000 to build a Physic garden, a garden for medicinal plants. The site the university chose was 5 acres of low meadowland just outside the old city walls, beside the River Cherwell. But the meadow flooded regularly, and before the garden came, it had served as a burial ground, first for Oxford's Jewish community, and then later for victims of plague. It was not the obvious place for a garden, but it was what they had. And before a single plant could go in, the ground had to be raised. Records say more than 4,000 cartloads of muck and dunge were hauled in to lift the meadow above the river's reach. Then came the walls, tall stone walls to shelter the plants and create a quiet place for study. And then, on June 15th, with a hard winter predicted, the first greenhouse in Britain went up. Not iron and glass, not soaring domes, just stone and large windows to gather what warmth the sun offered. And then a charcoal fire and a gardener to keep it all going through the dark. Then, in 1632, a German gardener named Jakob Bobart arrived as the garden's first official keeper. Bobart was a character. He kept a goat, wore a long beard, and on special occasions decorated it with silver. He tended medicinal herbs, angelica, rue, and wormwood, alongside plants that were arriving slowly from southern Europe and the Mediterranean. By the time he died, he had spent 40 years at those beds. The Oxford Physic Garden is now called the Oxford Botanic Garden, the oldest botanic garden in Britain. And it still stands beside the Cherwell River, inside those same stone walls. And it was on this day, in 1746, that the French botanist Charles-Louis L'Héritier de Brutelle was born in Paris, France. By profession, Charles was a magistrate, but by devotion, he was something else entirely. He spent his money, his evenings, and his considerable influence on plants most people called geraniums. But Charles had a problem with that. When he studied the Geranaceae family, he saw 2 distinct groups hiding under one name. One group had symmetrical flowers. The other had petals arranged just differently enough to belong to their own genus entirely. So Charles gave that second group a brand new name. He called them pelargoniums. And that's how every gardener who has ever gently corrected a friend, "That's a pelargonium, not a geranium," has Charles to thank. So Charles gave that second group a brand new name. He called them pelargoniums. And that's how every gardener who has ever gently corrected a friend, that's a pelargonium, not a geranium, has Charles to thank. And Charles wanted to be the first to name them. But to name new species, Charles needed more than just named Pierre-Joseph Redoute. At just 25, Redoute had talent and almost nothing else. But Charles knew exactly what he was looking at. He had found the Raphael of flowers before the world knew it, and he put Redoute to work. But then the revolution arrived, and somehow, even as an aristocrat with a magistrate's title, Charles kept his head through the worst years, working, publishing, and staying beside his plants. Until September of 1800, when Charles was killed in the street near his Paris home. He was 54 years old. When Charles died, he left behind names for hundreds of new plant species and a genus he believed would set the record straight. And in the scientific world, it did. But everyday gardeners, the ones buying flats at the nursery every spring, kept right on saying geranium. They still do. And whenever I reach for a flat of geraniums at the nursery, I always think about Charles, because he proved that a scientist can call a plant any name they like. But in the real world, you can't simply rename a plant and expect people to fall in line, especially when their grandmothers grew it and knew it by another name. The word geranium has decades of summer porches and inherited clay pots and someone's hands that we can still see in our mind's eye. Charles was trying to rename a botanical category, but gardeners weren't rejecting that category. They were simply embracing a memory of a word they couldn't let go of: geranium. More than a plant, a lineage and a love that got passed down with the plant. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear a poem from the American poet Amy Clampitt, born on this day, June 15th in 1920. Amy grew up on a farm in Iowa, and she moved to New York after college. She spent the next 40 years writing in obscurity. She was a librarian for the Audubon Society and later an editor at Oxford University Press, where she filled notebooks, walked, and learned the names of everything. She was 63 when her first collection, The Kingfisher, was published. Amy was in Maine the summer she wrote her poem, Sun Underfoot Among the Sundews. She was standing in a bog, surrounded by sundews, the carnivorous plants whose sticky hairs catch insects and glitter in the light like jewels. Amy wrote, "What is it but a bogland that can support such a brilliance as the sundew? Its crimson threads a tiny forest of glandular hairs, each with a drop of glue at the tip for a jewel." Amy died in September of 1994, just a few months after she married her longtime partner. In her final weeks, she asked to have her bed moved into her study so she could watch the birds at the feeder outside the window. When someone asked her about the view, she said, "What I like about this view is that there's so much going on." And that was near the end. That was Amy at her window, seeing everything. And every time I make a garden that can be seen from the house, I think about Amy at that window, watching the birds and seeing just so much going on. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, The Colossus and Other Poems by Sylvia Plath. This week on the show, we're celebrating Poetry and Literature Week. It's 5 days of language that gardens have always inspired from debut collections to award-winning spell books, from California anthologies to a poet who tended his garden all the way to 100. We begin with Sylvia. The Colossus and Other Poems was Sylvia Plath's first published collection, released in England in 1960 and in the United States 2 years later. It was the only collection published during her lifetime. She died in February of 1963 at just 30 years old. But this book announced her. The language is controlled, emotionally precise, fearless, and the themes that she kept returning to are already here. Death, the harshness of nature, and the complicated inheritance between a daughter and a father she lost too early. Among the poems is The Beekeeper's Daughter. Sylvia writes, "Trumpet throats open to the beaks of birds. The golden rain tree drips its powders down in these little boudoirs streaked with orange and red. The anthers nod their heads, potent as kings to father dynasties. The air is rich. Here is a queenship no mother can contest. A fruit that's death to taste. Dark flesh, dark parings." A fruit that's death to taste. Even in a garden full of gold and pollen and heat, Sylvia finds the thing underneath, the thing that costs you. And that's the whole book, really. And it's the perfect place to begin Poetry and Literature Week. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 1968, in the ruins of Coventry Cathedral in the English Midlands, that John Lennon and Yoko Ono planted 2 acorns. Coventry Cathedral had been bombed by the German Luftwaffe in November of 1940, reduced to a shell of stone and open sky. The ruins were left standing on purpose, not as a wound, but as a witness. A new cathedral rose beside them, and together the two became a symbol of peace and reconciliation that drew people from all over the world. John and Yoko chose it deliberately. They arrived in a white Rolls-Royce, wearing white suits and carrying 2 acorns in plastic coffee cups. They were there to create something they called Acorns for Peace. 1 acorn to face east and the other to face west. But it nearly didn't happen. The cathedral's canon had reservations about their living arrangements. They were each still married to other people, and the canon questioned whether 2 acorns and coffee cups qualified as art. But after considerable shouting and several frantic phone calls, he relented. John and Yoko knelt down and pressed the acorns into the earth and set a small plaque that read, "Yoko by John Lennon, John by Yoko Ono." 2 days later, the plaque was stolen. And then soon after that, a pair of Beatles fans crept back and dug up the acorns, coating them in nail varnish to preserve them. One of those fans was later arrested for drunk driving and surrendered the acorns to the police. But since the acorns had no owner and no apparent value, they were dropped in an office drawer where they stayed for more than 50 years. Then, in 2023, a retiring police officer clearing out his desk found them, and he donated them to the Liverpool Beatles Museum, where they are on display today. In 2005, Yoko returned to Coventry, where she planted 2 saplings she called Japanese oaks. But botanists who examined them later found that they were sweet chestnuts. Peace, as it turns out, is harder to plant than love. But here's what's true about an oak, the real one, Quercus robur, the English oak. It asks 100 years to become itself. An acorn no bigger than your thumbnail carries the blueprint for a tree that will outlive everyone alive today. It feeds 100 species, it holds the soil, and it remembers the weather and the rings of its heartwood long after storms have passed. When John Lennon pressed that acorn into the earth at Coventry, he wasn't planting a tree. He was planting time. Peace is not an event. It's something you tend, something that takes longer than a lifetime, something you plant anyway. And every now and then, I find myself thinking about those acorns just sitting in that drawer, all those years, just waiting. As we close the show today, remember, these happy summer days are all too brief. And garden poets like Celia Thaxter knew it. And you know it, and I know it. And that knowledge that the smiling skies will grow root again is not a reason for sorrow. It's a reason to be out there, in the garden, today, right now. As Celia said, we should be looking the garden full in the face and worshiping every mood. There's no better way to savor a summer afternoon. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.